Hi, I'm Rich Bruckner with Inside HPC, and we're here at the QLogic booth at SC11. Today I'm here with Joe Yaworski, and Joe is the Director of HPC Product Marketing at QLogic.
That's right, Rich.
So, Joe, what's new? I mean, it's been a while since we talked. What's going on at QLogic and HPC space?
So probably the interesting news is that we have started to install the TLCC2, and just to refresh your memory, the tri-labs, that's Los Alamos, Sandia, and Lawrence Livermore, basically went out to bid for a next generation set of clusters for all three labs. They were building those clusters around Sandy Bridge, and they went out to bid, and in the May timeframe ended up doing a benchmark. Our current TrueScale QDR technology did very well performance-wise versus our competition's next generation offering. So I'm really pleased to say that we're now installing those clusters, and in fact we delivered one of the larger clusters we delivered it at the beginning of November, stood the thing up, and actually were able to run an HPL run that was submitted to the top 500 list. It made number 15. It's almost a petaflop, and it is the #1 performing Sandy Bridge cluster on the top 500. So a great set of working relationships were required to pull it off. So Intel, Appro, and QLogic, we all worked together. But the amazing thing is the cluster went in, it's almost 3,000 nodes, which is another good point. It's not one of these 10,000 node clusters to get to this point. It's only 3,000 nodes. So, you know, that's a good compliment to Intel. Appro did a great job staging everything so that when it showed up on site, it was plugged together and it worked. The labs use this concept called scalable units. So they create basically a scalable unit is almost 200 nodes. It's all configured with edge switches and a core, and all they have to do is bring in all of these scalable units, put them together, hook up the or interconnect the core, bring it up, ran HPL on it, got number 15 on the top 500.
That's terrific. I mean, that's got to be close to the wire when they would not be able to take any more submissions, right?
They were. It's a little tight, but you know, when you think about it, to bring in almost 3,000 nodes and stand it up in an incredibly short period of time, it's just a testament to the whole team, to the technologies, and the partnership.
So Joe, I guess, you know, the secret sauce here is what I'm curious about. You know, this is QDR InfiniBand, I assume?
That's correct.
Yeah, so why has it performed so well?
So our major advantage starts with, we designed our InfiniBand from the ground up for HPC. So originally InfiniBand was spec'd out and designed to be an I/O bus. Essentially a channel bus, a backbone for the data center. Well, that was in the late 90s, early 2000 timeframe. A lot of things happened at that point, and the industry basically realized it was not going to be the data center backbone. But InfiniBand did find its niche by about 2003 timeframe as being high performance computing. The basic design, though, is more for an I/O paradigm, more IOPS. So a lot of things had to be retrofitted to work. In about that time frame, there's a company called Pascal that basically looked around and said, what's Miracom and Quadrix doing? Let's take that to InfiniBand. They designed an interface very specifically that's semantically well matched to MPI. And because of that, we've changed the paradigm. High performance computing is tens of millions of small messages. Our whole architecture is designed to handle millions and millions of messages, and in fact we have upwards of an 8 times advantage in message rate performance. So as you scale a problem up, and all of those nodes, sockets, and cores need to communicate, they're all messages. And as you scale up a problem, the size of the message drops, but the number of messages goes up very dramatically. So to put it in perspective, we have about an 8 times advantage over our competition. And as a result of that, we perform very well. That was proven at Lawrence Livermore National Labs. Last year they presented here in the booth and basically said the TrueScale InfiniBand that they deployed at that point was the best in class. They got a very, very high message rate for MPI of almost 30 million messages per second. And the other thing that they were surprised about is the collective's performance. Our native product with no special accelerations or anything, just built in, performs better than our competition even after they add in things like Core Direct or Fabric Collective's acceleration. So without any additional hardware cost or complexity, this is all built into our architecture. So it starts with message rate. They also said that they got 1 to 2 microseconds latency across a 2,000 node fabric. And then the third thing that they said was the collective's performance was excellent. That then followed through, and I'm certain had an influence on the selection here for TLCC2. And now we're proving it again with the installations that are starting in TLCC2, again giving us that spot on the top 500 list.
It's interesting. So, you know, Joe, we're here at SC11 where people want to know what's coming around the corner, right? For the next round of things, and you're installing these tri-labs. What are you able to share with us about what's next for QLogic?
At this point, we're looking and saying our current generation works really, really well. We know that it works well. We know it performs well against our competition. We also know that most applications aren't bandwidth limited. And so we're looking and saying, especially with Sandy Bridge moving out to the right? It was supposed to be released in November. It then, I believe, is now the time frame. I think you need to talk to Intel, but I think it's February, March time frame. That doesn't leave a lot of runway to recover the investment we would have to make into FDR. So I'm not going to say exactly what our plans are, but we're in now looking and saying our current technology works real well. Most applications don't need the bandwidth. And with that in mind, we think we got a good architecture that'll take us beyond FDR.
That's terrific. So are you bullish on the future of InfiniBand as this goes forward? You know, we're looking at exascale by 2018. You think will InfiniBand have a role there?
Well, look at it this way. The industry has literally invested probably several $100 million, maybe more, into InfiniBand. That investment would need to be recreated. So we're probably, when you look at what we invested, what Voltaire invested, what Mellanox invested, plus all of those companies that aren't around anymore that did contribute to everything that goes into InfiniBand, it would be a major reinvestment to go and create that. So now, will InfiniBand scale to exascale? Probably not in its current substantiation, but the basics are there, the architecture is there. So a future generation out, 5 years out, 8 years out from now, I suspect it'll be InfiniBand, just because I don't think people can afford to throw away that investment that's already been made.
Sure. Well, Joe, have you looked at the top 500 overall? How are you guys faring? You have that landmark number 15. Are you happy with where you are and where you're going?
Oh, absolutely. We've added a number of additional clusters over on top of what we had. So even though, always typically maybe the last 50, 70 clusters on the list, it's like, okay, are they going to fall off and be replaced? We've actually added, for all the ones that we lost on that list, we've actually increased our market share of InfiniBand clusters. So we're pretty pleased. And a lot of those clusters, by the way, it's not just the cluster that went into Lawrence Livermore National Labs with the Sandy Bridge and so forth on that number 15. We have a number of Sandy Bridge clusters in the top 100 and several more in the top, several in the top 50 and more in the top 100. So we're actually pretty bullish. We're looking and saying Our product performs well. It's showing up more and more on the top 500 list. Now, you got to put this in reference. QLogic didn't start shipping its TrueScale InfiniBand until the end of 2009. So we're only 2 years into this. We've grabbed a significant amount of market share. We're showing up more and more on the top 500 list, and we're actually showing up now in these very large clusters and performing very well, especially with the latest Intel processors. The more that they come out with processing power with our architecture, the better we are and the farther we can scale.